When Sir Criston Cole first appears on screen, he is the ultimate picture of a classic fantasy hero. He is handsome, undeniably skilled, and seemingly the perfect knight in shining armor. It is a brilliant setup for what becomes one of the most jarring character shifts in modern fantasy. A shift that transforms a fan-favorite romantic interest into a deeply vindictive antagonist. Despite his self-righteous claims, Criston Cole's defection had nothing to do with honor, duty, or the good of the realm. His betrayal was far pettier. Rhaenyra had simply shattered his fragile ego. But how exactly does a Kingsguard sworn to protect the named heir become the primary instrument of her family's destruction? To understand his betrayal, we have to look past his self-righteous speeches. The most damning evidence of his hypocrisy is not found in his stated commitment to duty. It is found in the escalating, unprovoked violence he directs at highly specific targets later in the series, such as Sir Joffrey Lonmouth, Sir Harwin Strong, and Lord Lyman Beesbury. We first meet Cole as a common-born soldier with genuine combat experience. When a position opens on the Kingsguard, the small council gives Princess Rhaenyra the task of selecting the new knight, simply as a distraction. They treat her like a child, handing her busy work to keep her from meddling in the council's discussion regarding the brewing war in the Stepstones. But Rhaenyra refuses to be pacified. Instead, she uses this moment to fully exercise her royal authority for the first time. To the visible dismay of the hand of the king and the other advisors, who would never willingly elevate a commoner, she bypasses the standard rules of noble posturing. She makes a highly unconventional, yet perfectly pragmatic choice. She selects Cole specifically because he is the only candidate who has seen actual combat. While this was a very smart display of her growing power, it established a dangerous dynamic. Rhaenyra is the royal heir holding absolute authority, while Cole is the common-born son of a steward. She literally plucked him from obscurity, creating a volatile power imbalance that would later have disastrous, unforeseen consequences. Cole knows that he owes his high station exclusively to Rhaenyra's favor. Lacking a noble house or wealth to fall back on, his social standing and fundamental sense of self-worth become completely tethered to Rhaenyra. Because his entire identity relies on the validation of a single person, his position is incredibly fragile. This dependency creates a volatile situation when his primary source of validation eventually tells him no. The shift begins after Rhaenyra compels Cole to break his vow of chastity. Though he attempts a weak refusal, his resistance quickly crumbles. He is paralyzed by a mix of his own suppressed attraction, his knightly reverence for her authority, and the heavy reality that he feels deeply indebted to her. Once Sir Criston's sense of duty, lack of authority, and personal desires all collide at once, he is simply in no position to refuse the princess who gave him everything. Once that line is crossed, it can never be uncrossed. Sir Criston's concern with his broken vows is initially genuine, but it is entirely self-centered. In Westerosi culture, a commoner has no family name, land, or wealth. A Kingsguard's white cloak is literally his entire social currency and human worth. By breaking his vow of chastity, Criston genuinely feels degraded. To salvage his sense of self, Sir Criston proposes a desperate plan to Rhaenyra, naively expecting her to abandon her royal duties and her dragon just to marry him and escape to Essos. He pitches this as a romantic fantasy, but it is essentially a selfish attempt to retroactively justify his actions. Because If he allows himself to face the realization that he broke his vows for a cheap fling, he is just a disgraced, dishonored knight. But if he did it for a grand, true love that ends in marriage and Essos, then he is a tragic romantic hero. Essentially, Sir Criston expects Princess Rhaenyra to sacrifice her social status and wealth and to follow him penniless to another continent where she is nobody, simply to absolve his own guilt. Rhaenyra understands that Westerosi rules regarding chastity are largely performative. She suggests that Cole keep his prestigious position while they maintain their relationship in secrecy. But Cole, with his strict worldview and his social status being fully dependent on her, cannot accept this reality. Despite the promise of oranges and cinnamon, Rhaenyra is forced to reject him. By refusing his proposal, Rhaenyra essentially denied Sir Criston his redemption arc, and without chance for redemption with a romantic getaway, he cannot tolerate a reality in which he broke his vows for her and did not get sufficiently rewarded for it. Hopeless and devastated, he begins to project his own actions onto her, painting her as the temptress who ruined his honor. Stripped of his idealized romance, Cole turns deeply bitter. He begins to project his resentment outward. This festering anger needs only a small trigger to ignite, leading to his first public outburst at the royal wedding. Sir Joffrey Lonmouth had deduced Cole's secret and lightly suggested a mutual understanding, providing no actual threat. However, Joffrey unknowingly poked a deeply raw wound. Cole had just been rejected, and Joffrey's nonchalant acceptance of Rhaenyra and Laenor's pragmatic arrangement served as a painful reminder of the political reality Rhaenyra chose over him. Furthermore, it is easy to imagine Cole feeling mocked and deeply offended that a stranger knew his most shameful secret. Seeing Joffrey happily living the exact scenario Cole was too proud and too possessive to accept for himself likely infuriated him, especially knowing Laenor got to keep his paramour while Cole was cast aside. While Cole might later try to justify the murder as an act of defending the crown, the reality was much uglier. Beating Joffrey to death was nothing more than a violent tantrum. The profound shame of his public outburst initially drives Cole toward immediate self-destruction. Rather than confront his compromised reality, he isolates himself in the Godswood, fully intending to turn his blade on himself. However, Queen Alicent's intervention fundamentally shifts his trajectory from internalized guilt to externalized revenge. She provides his fractured ego with a vital lifeline, allowing Cole to seamlessly weaponize his bitter personal vendetta under the guise of her broader political cause. A decade later, in the training yard, he actively uses his position to torment Rhaenyra's children. He pits the older sons of Viserys against Rhaenyra's younger ones, and goads Sir Harwin Strong into a fight. He operates under the guise of an impartial instructor, yet his actions are clearly and entirely driven by a lingering desire to punish Rhaenyra. This hostility highlights a significant tactical failure on the part of the Blacks. Rhaenyra and Daemon allowed an open, bitter enemy to remain in a position of power near the Queen. They left a man with a distinct personal vendetta against them to guard and train the royal family. Had they addressed this threat pragmatically years earlier, half the ensuing conflict might have been mitigated, and the conflict between Rhaenyra's and Viserys' sons may have ended far less violently. Because he is left unchecked, Cole's brutality ultimately escalates to outright treason following the death of King Viserys. During the small council meeting to discuss the succession, Lord Lyman Beesbury an unarmed elderly man, stands to voice legal dissent. Cole abruptly murders him by smashing his head into the table. This action strips away the facade of an honorable knight defending moral standards, revealing a man willing to eliminate political inconveniences through sheer brutality. It is interesting to compare Cole's newly emerging brutality with Prince Daemon. Pure reputation paints Daemon as the more volatile of the two, as he is firmly established as a dangerous figure. Yet Daemon never actually does anything as intimately brutal or utterly unjustified as Cole's spontaneous murders. Daemon is openly ambitious and a constant source of instability, but he never pretends to be a paragon of flawless virtue. He operates outside standard conventions because he finds them inefficient, doing so without hiding behind a cloak of moral superiority. Ultimately, Daemon is a pragmatist who remains fiercely loyal despite not caring what anyone thinks of him. Conversely, Cole commits severe atrocities while maintaining the illusion that his actions are righteous. He offers zero true loyalty, worried only about how he is perceived and terrified of the darkness he hides beneath his white cloak. Ultimately, Sir Criston Cole dedicated his life to dismantling Rhaenyra's political structure simply because she prioritized the realm over his idealized fantasy. But when did he cross the line of no return for you? How fast did you go from rooting for the charming knight to being horrified by his actions? Let me know in the comments. And as always, liking the video helps me reach other people just like you. And subscribing helps you see my new House of the Dragon breakdowns as soon as they're out. See you in the next one.